On Tech News Today, Twitter adds features that are worth tweeting home about. Plus, the feds nab a Russian spy ring that wanted to destabilize the stock market. And a new Snapchat alternative puts those useless cat photos to work. It's all coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Tuesday, January 27th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by Prosper. Prosper is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace that connects people who are looking to borrow money with those who have money to lend. Visit prosper.com/twit and receive a $50 Visa prepaid card when you get a loan. And by Shutterstock.com. With over 46 million high-quality stock photos, illustrations, vectors, and video clips, Shutterstock helps you take your creative projects to the next level. For 20% off image subscription packages on your new account, go to Shutterstock.com and use the offer code TNT115. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. Welcome to the show, coming to you live from the tech broadcasting capital of the world, Petaluma. It's also the egg capital of the world. I'm Mike Elgan, and joining us as co-anchor is After Nine's content czar, Joseph H. Panettieri. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing great, Mike. How you been?
I've been great. The weather's great out here. How are you guys doing? I understand that you were supposed to have a blizzard. Did that ever happen?
Yeah, you know, it happened for some of us. I'm on Eastern Long Island, so yes, it did happen here. New York City didn't get hit that hard. The only weather-related urgent item on my agenda for today is actually getting out the Dunkin' Donuts because I have not had my latte yet today, but the roads have been horrendous.
I see. And for those of us on the West Coast, Dunkin' Donuts is it's like a Starbucks, but not exactly.
Yeah, it's like yeah. You can just tell by your wardrobe versus my wardrobe, Starbucks versus Dunkin' Donuts, and I think that really explains it.
Well, speaking of people who, I don't know, I have no transition here. Let's talk about Apple for a sec. Their earnings report is at 2 p.m. Pacific today. That's 5 p.m. Eastern when the markets close. Any predictions about what Apple's going to report? I mean, I think the consensus is that they're going to knock it out of the park, but what do you think?
iPhone 6 all the way. And, you know, everyone's talking about China revenue, which, you know, right now with all these privacy concerns over in China and all the big enterprise players struggling to really get revenue going in China, Apple seems to have quite a strong story going. And I think we'll hear both iPhone 6 and China stories quite loudly.
Yeah, one analyst said that China, for the first time, bought more iPhones than the United States did. So that is huge, and that is a trend that is not going to be reversed. It's probably just going to, I'm sure China is just going to pull away in terms of the number of units. Plus, the iPhone is more expensive in China. Go figure. Well, let's jump into the news. Twitter made some major improvements today. The company added a group messaging feature and also a Vine-like video capture capability. Here to tell us all about it is Kurt Wagner, who wrote 2 articles on the updates for Recode. Welcome to you, Kurt Wagner.
Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're here. Now, how does the group messaging feature work exactly?
So the group messaging is very similar to the regular messaging, which Twitter calls direct messaging. And essentially, instead of being able to connect with someone one-to-one, you can now talk or message, if you will, in groups of up to 20 people. So if you wanted to, I don't know, collect your cycling team together, or if you wanted to get the band to all talk about your upcoming show, you could do so on Twitter now, whereas before it would have been a lot harder. And so one of the nuances of Twitter messaging is that it's a little wonky because you can only message with someone who's following you. The way that the group messaging works is you can invite anyone to the group who's following you, and then once people are inside the group, they can talk to whoever they want. So kind of helps people connect with others that they might not otherwise be able to message with. But for the most part, it's more just adding this group feature to what was originally one-to-one.
So, Kurt, is that to say that you can't direct message a single person who's not following you, or can you do that?
So if you are following me, I can direct message you. If you, let's see, if I'm not following you, then you can't send me a message. So essentially what that does is it keeps like a celebrity from getting thousands of messages from people who follow them, but you know, they're not necessarily following them back. So it kind of protects people who maybe have a lot of followers, who are higher profile, but don't want to be receiving messages all the time.
It seems like kind of an obvious feature. It's I wonder why they didn't add this like 6 years ago. They've allowed a lot of other messaging apps to gain a lot of traction because they can do this sort of thing. And now they've finally rolled it out. And I guess it's a welcome feature. I'm sure that a lot of people will get a lot of use out of it. Now, let's talk about this video feature. Can you tell us about what that is and how it works?
Sure. So I think of the two features, I think the video one, in my opinion, is going to be a little bit more important to both the company and I think to the way that a lot of people use the service. So I think people are going to see a lot more video in their timelines, and that's because now you can not only record, but you can edit and then publish video all through the Twitter app. So before, you could maybe share a video through Vine, you could record a video through Vine, upload it to Twitter, it would show up in the stream. But otherwise, there was no real easy way for the general public to consume and share video on Twitter. So now they're making it possible to do that right within the app. And I think it's going to be big because I think people are going to start to kind of migrate there and share videos in that way. And ultimately, Twitter is going to be able to kind of create a video vibe, if you will, in the timeline. And that'll pay dividends when they start doing a lot more video ads down the line.
So does that mean that Vine basically gets killed at this point? I mean, what happens to Vine going forward?
So Twitter told me yesterday that they are certainly not killing Vine. They plan to keep both the Twitter native video feature and Vine as its own standalone app as it stands now. I kind of hinted in my story, and I still believe that this does pose some competition to Vine. I think that there's a 30-second limit on the Twitter video, and there's a 6-second limit on the Vine video. You record very much in the same way. You edit very much in the same way. So the tools are very similar. And I think a lot of people upload to Vine with the sole purpose or with the intent of then uploading to Twitter. And now they don't necessarily have to do that middle step. I got a lot of flack for that on Twitter so far this morning. A lot of Vine diehards disagree completely. And I see why, because Vine does provide a little bit more of an entertainment value. A lot of people have made funny 6-second videos. They made a career out of it, literally. So I don't think Vine's going anywhere. I do still believe, though, that the services are kind of similar, and there's reason to believe that people might bypass the Vine step and just start uploading video to Twitter.
Kurt, is this a harbinger of the video advertising to come on Twitter?
So Twitter's already kind of tested with video ads a little bit. They have what they call an amplified program. So live TV, if you're watching the basketball game, you see something great happen on the screen, and then you look down on your phone, all of a sudden the highlight is already right there in Twitter. So there's been some video ads on Twitter already. But what I feel like this is going to do is kind of what Facebook did, which is they make consumer video really important and really prevalent so that you're used to seeing videos in the feed. And then once you become familiar with not only uploading your own video, but consuming video on Twitter, well, then it's not going to be so weird when a brand comes along and does a video advertisement in your timeline. So I think that, yes, this is definitely a kind of a step towards buttering up the user base, if you will, to be ready to receive video ads in more frequency down the line.
I prefer softening them up, but that's just me. Kurt Wagner's at recode.net. You can follow him on Twitter at KurtWagner8. Thanks for joining us, Kurt.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, in just a sec, we got some more news for you, but first, I want to talk about Prosper, one of our sponsors today. Prosper is what we're calling a peer-to-peer lending marketplace. That means you're not borrowing money from a bank. You're not borrowing money from the Russian mafia. You're borrowing money from people who are investing in you and your project. It's a really fantastic and very, very kind of Silicon Valley-esque idea. You don't want to borrow money from family and friends. That is a horrible idea. Just visit prosper.com/twit, and you can get a $50 Visa prepaid card when you get a loan, and you can borrow up to $35,000 in as few as 5 days. What could you do with $35,000? You could pay off high rate credit cards, fix up your house, start a new business. So many things you could do with this wonderful source of borrowed money. You can check your low rate instantly, and it won't even affect your credit score. Just go to Prospero.com/twit. And for a limited time, Prospero's offering Twit viewers and listeners a $50 Visa prepaid card when you get a loan. Just go to Prospero.com/twit, and that's a special site just for TNT fans. Now, up to $35,000 in just 5 days and a $50 Visa prepaid card. Just go to Prospero.com/twit. We thank them for their support of Tech News Today. Well, Joe, it looks like Microsoft had a killer Windows 10 announcement. How did they do on their earnings call?
You know, the earnings call was interesting in that, this information came out last night, but Wall Street is reacting today. And Microsoft's latest quarterly earnings, they show a lot of promise when it comes to cloud computing, some progress in mobile, but Wall Street is definitely concerned if you look at their stock today. And here with some insights is Alison Griswold, a reporter over from Slate. Alison, how you been?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us today. Hey, can you give us the top level takeaway here? What is the big picture when it comes to what Microsoft stated yesterday and how Wall Street is reacting today?
Yeah, sure. So Microsoft's earnings actually came in just exactly in line with what was anticipated. They were right on the mark for their earnings. I think they were even a touch over on revenue. But on their earnings call, they were pretty tepid about their forecast. They talked about unfavorable currency exchange rates, and their stock started declining after hours. And as of now, it's down about 9%. So Wall Street's not too happy with it.
What else besides the factor that you just mentioned, the currency and so on? Are investors kind of freaking out about some of the timeline and future products that Microsoft has announced? For example, the Surface Pro 3, the cloud, all that kind of stuff, maybe the HoloLens. What else is behind the investors' sort of bitterness today?
Well, so the Surface revenue was actually a good spot in their earnings report. It was up 24%. And Microsoft is trying to move away from like its core software businesses to more of a hardware focus. And one of the things about the Windows 10 platform that's supposed to be pretty big when they roll it out is it's going to be like a single universal platform that helps to underpin all their devices and is unifying in that sense. So one thing I was looking at a bit was their phone numbers. They sold 10.5 million phones in the last quarter, which was big for them because it was over 10 million, which was a mark they were trying to get to, I think. But it totally pales in comparison with what Samsung and Apple and the really big smartphone makers are doing.
Hey, Alison, what about sort of this potential dichotomy? And what I mean by that is you've got Microsoft's traditional businesses in transition mode, the Windows business and the Office business. And I think Wall Street, that's where the big concern is, that okay, you're already seeing a little bit of softness in that traditional Windows and Office business, and now Microsoft has announced that Windows 10, there's going to be all these free capabilities and free offers with Windows 10. So I think Wall Street's a little worried about business continuing to soften there potentially. But on the flip side, the cloud numbers continue to go through the roof with Azure. And my perspective is it feels like Microsoft is really caught up to Amazon, at least in terms of mind share, maybe not market share, but mind share on the cloud. Is that a fair way to sort of position Microsoft at this point, this challenge in the traditional Windows and Office business, but this incredible explosive growth on the cloud side?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I know one of their concerns is that they're just having trouble growing their sales in China and Japan, which are two really big markets. Cloud is interesting because, I mean, especially with like Box just went public and you have all these other smaller startups that are focusing on cloud. And there's this question of like how much of it is a commodity at some point and you just can't really differentiate on it. So yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
I was impressed by a couple of other points that I don't see a lot of publications writing too much about. One of them is that Office 365 Home and personal subscribers increased 30% over the same quarter in the previous year, and search advertising revenue grew 23%. And they said that Bing is now at nearly 20% market share for the search market in the United States. Those are really good numbers, especially since, if they want to compete with Google, and they do in the search world, they're gaining on it. And if they want to move Office users to these subscriptions, they seem to be gaining on that as well. Are there any investors or anyone else who are zeroing in on those factors as possible areas where Microsoft will continue to grow in the future?
I couldn't tell you what investors think right now, but search is definitely an area that I would think Google is concerned about, especially after, Firefox switched over to Yahoo. And like you said, they noted in their report, Microsoft did, that their search share is up. So that's big for them. And there's always the chronic question of at what point does search these days start even to transition over to more second tier search companies like Amazon or other shopping companies, because people just go straight to those websites and conduct their search activity there, which for anyone who's running a big search platform takes away from the advertising revenue they get when people conduct searches through their own site.
And of course, when people conduct searches through Cortana, Siri, Google Now, and so on, that takes away some advertising revenue as well. Alison Griswold is at slate.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at Alison Griswold. Thank you so much for joining us, Alison.
Thank you.
The Justice Department uncovered a three-man Russian spy ring operating in New York City. In a set of allegations, it sounds like the plot of a good spy thriller. The spies are accused of using sex and money to recruit spies, passing coded messages, and other nefarious activities. But the craziest accusation is that the spies were particularly interested in the New York Stock Exchange, high-frequency trading algorithms, and, quote, mechanisms of use for destabilization of the markets, unquote. The government arrested one of the spies in the Bronx yesterday, and the other two are still at large. Russell Berman is an associate editor at The Atlantic and joins us now. Welcome to you, Russell.
Thanks for having me.
Glad you're here. Now, can you tell us more about this spy ring? What else were they up to, and how long have they been at it?
So they've been operating, according to the Justice Department, for the last 2 years, and the prosecutors believe that this sprung up out of a much bigger spy ring that the government took down in 2010, which was known as the Illegals, which, interestingly enough, was part of the inspiration for the FX show The Americans.
Love that show.
Which is just about to start its third season this week. But the current, the most recent spy ring, comes at a very different time in Russian U.S. relations. The last one was as, we were trying to reset with Vladimir Putin back in 2010. And in this case, in addition to the market destabilization that you mentioned, it appears that these men were looking for intel on what new economic sanctions the U.S. was going to bring against Russia, in response to the incursion into Ukraine and the annexation of Crimea. They also wanted to know about the energy industry, and as you mentioned, it was, sort of out of an old movie like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy or one of those. They would meet outdoors using code words to avoid detection. They were overheard talking amongst themselves about trying to recruit university students, including women that they would sleep with, to get more information out of them, all those kinds of things.
Hey, Russell, overall, this term or phrase, destabilization of the markets, are you referring specifically to the New York Stock Exchange itself or particular markets and industries like oil and energy, et cetera?
Right. Well, the complaint didn't go into too much detail about that, but it appears that one of the strategies that they used was they would try to plant questions with a Russian journalist from a state-based Russian news agency, and they wanted to know about the New York Stock Exchange. They wanted to know about high-frequency trading, and quote, in one of the quotes was, quote, mechanisms of use for destabilization of the markets. And so that might be, where you see these flash crashes up or down that we've seen a couple of times over the last few years. But that seemed to be, the biggest potential impact of what they were doing in terms of the other things were just more or less trying to get information about what the U.S. was planning against Russia.
Well, it certainly was nice of the Justice Department to nab these guys a week before the Americans started up again, the new season. You can't buy that kind of publicity.
Right,
boy,
great timing.
Yeah, really lucky. Russell Berman is at theatlantic.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Russell Berman. Thanks for joining us, Russell.
Thank you.
Well, we all know Snapchat has self-destructing messages, but now another app goes one step further. What's going on, Joe?
Well, Mike, here comes Wicker, and here with the details is Yael Grauer from Read Write.
So they have a new, it's called WTF Wicker Time Feed, and basically what it allows you to do is to send a message to people that you select who are also Wicker users, and then it'll post sort of like a decoy cat photo on Facebook. And so Facebook only sees the cat photo, and then the people you selected can click through on that photo and see, your quote-unquote secret image.
Now, isn't this going to cause people to lose a lot of followers? I mean, if you use it a lot, you're going to be posting a lot of cat photos.
I was wondering about that too, but I mean, cats are pretty ubiquitous, so I don't know how many people will kind of get suspicious if you start posting cat photos, if it's something you already post.
It is.
But yeah, it's hard to say.
Now, do you have to use Facebook with this, or could you just use it outside of Facebook?
You can use it outside of Facebook, and you can send that message to 151 people, which is more than you could communicate within a group before.
So I imagine in every case, the actual secret photo, no matter how you go about it, is in the cloud and remains in the cloud, and you simply look at it from the cloud. Is that how this works?
I mean, I suppose so. It looks like it stays within the Wicker app. I don't really know exactly, they're closed source, so I don't know exactly how they keep it secure to that app. But.
Okay, and then in terms of the platform supported, is this Apple only so far, and do they plan to go out to Android and PCs down the road?
It is Apple only, and they said that they're hoping to release it on Android in about 2 weeks, and then after that, they'll have a desktop version.
All right. Well, Yael Grauer is at Yael Writes. That's YAEL Writes.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at Yael Writes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Joe, whenever you're behind the wheel, whenever we drive, it's a good idea to watch where you're going at all times, and it sounds like the government agrees.
Yes, the government certainly does agree, Mike. These are actually scary times if you checked out today's Wall Street Journal. There's a report there that has now gone viral on the web about the Justice Department. They're building a national database that tracks real-time movement of cars throughout the U.S. So basically, all these cameras situated on highways throughout the U.S., Mike, that's feeding into some sort of big data system that authorities like the Drug Enforcement Administration are using to seize cars, cash, assets, and other things from drug trafficking. But of course, privacy advocates are really concerned about this development.
Yes, well, they should. And now I'm wondering where they're really getting all this data. I mean, of course, cars have the ability to track themselves, essentially. People have smartphones with GPS. There are toll roads and so on that sort of take a picture of, and even traffic, red light cameras and stuff like that are taking pictures of of that sort of thing. And you always kind of assume that somebody out there, some government agency, is harvesting all this information. But this sounds very systematic and incredibly abusive, especially in an age when clearly everyone is very kind of touchy about their personal privacy.
Yeah, what was really interesting to me about this report is it seems like this particular database is siloed. And what I mean by that is it sounds like all the data they're gathering comes from the highway cameras, these digital cameras throughout highways in the U.S. And to your point, Mike, why would you build a system like that, and if you were going to be on that side of the fence, and not begin to also gather information from the cars themselves and or the smartphones in the cars and build sort of a super database, a big data of databases that collects information from all of those different endpoints? And so far, it seems like in that article that we haven't gotten there, but I think, Mike, the picture you're painting is an accurate one. It seems to be where we're going.
It is. And of course, these sorts of things will become politically sensitive, but the argument in favor of them are, think of the children. We can track, kids that have been kidnapped, criminals who are on the loose, dangerous terrorists who might be driving around, and the effect of you, the average law-abiding citizen, is zero. You won't even know that this is happening, so don't worry your pretty little head about it. But the larger issue is not necessarily this particular type of tracking, this project or program that they have tracking real-time movement of cars around the United States. It's the cumulative effect of lots of companies and the government tracking all your phone calls, your internet connectivity, where you drive, where you live, what you're, scanning your face so they do face recognition. We're really heading into this, we're sliding into this dystopian future kind of sci-fi world where you can be tracked and you are being tracked in every conceivable way by lots of different organizations, and you never know who has control or access to that information. You never really can know, and this is a case where, what if their database gets hacked by, by terrorists or spies or whatever? I mean, if that information exists, it's usable by who knows who.
Yeah, and to your point, Mike, these cameras can actually identify who is in the car, who's driving it, who's seated as the passenger, who's in the back seat, et cetera. Not in all cases, but in many cases that is exactly what's going on right now. And longer term, just to continue connecting the dots between where we are today and where we are in this, unfortunately, dystopian future that's coming. Think about the self-driving cars. When they come, as they emerge, and they report back to the dealerships, which then report back to the manufacturers, is there going to be the extra step of reporting back to the government in terms of what these cars are up to on the road?
Yeah, exactly. It's really an alarming report that we're getting, and we'll of course track this as we go forward to find out what happens politically, whether this is allowed to continue and develop, or whether it gets shut down. It should be a politically sensitive issue. We should all be talking about this sort of thing, so hopefully that will actually happen. We've got some product updates coming up, but first let's talk about Shutterstock, our other sponsor today. Shutterstock is a website that will enable you to find millions, 46 million high-quality stock photos, illustrations, vectors, and video clips. They add 300,000 images every single week, and they have a fantastic search feature. If you're going to be building a website or running a blog or doing anything online, you have to be visual, and you can't have amateur hour photography because you're going to look like an amateurish business. I see so many websites out there that use just really terrible photography, and it just kind of it tarnishes the entire brand. And you don't want to do that. You want to use the high quality photography that you'll find at Shutterstock.com. You can download 25 images a day with a standard subscription. That's the one we have here at Twit. We use it all the time. We never knock up against the maximum because, 25 a day, that's a lot of images, and it's a really low price. And you can share the light boxes. So if you're thinking about, you got a project where multiple people are working on it, you can knock some ideas around. Hey, what do you think of these 10 images? Or what do you think of those 100 images? You can put them all in the light box, and then everybody can take a look, and you can come to a decision about which images you really want to use for your project. It's a great service. No credit card needed. Just start an account and begin using Shutterstock to help imagine what your next project could be like, and save favorite images to a lightbox to review later. Once you decide to purchase, use the offer code TNT115, and new accounts will receive 20% off image subscription packages. That's Shutterstock.com, and for 20% off image subscription packages on new accounts, just use the offer code TNT115. And we thank Shutterstock for their support of Tech News Today. Well, Google plans to announce this week new cities that are next on the list to get its high-speed Google Fiber service. The cities are Atlanta, Georgia, Charlotte, North Carolina, Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, and Nashville, Tennessee. You four cities, I hate you because I'm jealous that you're getting this service and I'm not.
Yeah, Mike, I'm jealous as well. The one thing I am hoping for is an update from Google, though, for the low-income types of users who want that fee waived for the first-time installation. Huge fees involved for the first-time user, but for the true broadband user, this is good news. That's a great
thing to call for, and I support you on that. And good luck with that, Joe. I don't know if they're really going to do it. It's probably expensive enough as it is. Well, Snapchat will start pushing out content from a variety of publishers today, including ESPN, CNN, and Vice. The new feature is called Discover, and we'll see if people who signed up for a service to send secret self-destructing messages want to get information from CNN. I have my doubts. 1Password for iOS and OS X is getting new features today, including a new login creator tool and a one-time password feature for two-factor authentication. In mergers and acquisitions, Dropbox has acquired a company called Pixel Labs, which makes a GitHub-like version control service for visual designers. The terms of the deal were not disclosed, and I think this is, Joe Panettieri, part of a larger effort where cloud providers who started out with a very simple product essentially are expanding to enable all kinds of usage of that product beyond just like moving files in and out of folders.
Mike, great point. And the fact that this deal comes only was announced only a couple of days after Box goes public is really strategic. You know, I think there's a lot of concern on Wall Street about Box and Dropbox being those commodity providers, to your point, and it's only through these add-on services will they continue to offer value. Now Box's stock in this case jumped about 60% during the IPO last week, and it's still holding up well. And Dropbox, though privately held, wants to build up its momentum as well ahead of its own IPO.
Yeah, absolutely true, and the timing is almost certainly not coincidental. Well, we've got some big numbers for you. 6.6 million. Is our first big number. That's how many Xbox consoles Microsoft sold during the holiday quarter. That sounds like a big number, but actually that's 11% fewer than the previous year. Another big number, well, it's actually kind of a small number, 3. That's how many minutes it took Xiaomi to sell out on its flagship Mi Note smartphone after the first batch went on sale in China today. We don't know how many Xiaomi actually sold. They said they sold out, but they didn't say how many they had for sale. But the company claims they have 220 million phones reserved. The next batch comes out February 3rd. Well, in news you could lose, AOL's game blog Joystick wrote a pickup post from a Recode report. Nothing unusual about that, except for the Recode story is about Joystick's own closing. Joystick's post said, quote, "We do not comment on rumor and speculation," one staffer told us, wishing to remain anonymous, preparing for their lucrative PR career, unquote. In related news, Recode reports that Joystick is closing. Well, I got a TNT fan of the day today, Adam Hessen in Crisney, Indiana, who posted this picture on Google Plus of himself making pizza while watching the show on a tiny phone. This is he makes pizza professionally, ladies and gentlemen. Don't try this at home. And there he is watching TNT. That is awesome. How do you watch or listen to TNT? Just record a video or take a picture of your setup and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we will find it. And that is the tech news today. Joe, what's going on in the world of your company?
Yeah, after 9s, we're going to have some good conversation tonight with the CEO of Distill Networks. He's going to talk about how he raised $10 million to fight the bot fight. Basically, how to protect your website and your web presence from bot networks. And some venture capitalists are now backing him with $10 million. He's going to describe how he's building the company.
That's awesome. That's a very, very timely topic. I can't wait to hear it. And I thank you for coming on and co-anchoring today. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for having me every Tuesday, Mike. I always enjoy it.
All right, Joe. Take care.
Take care.
Well, you can subscribe to Tech News Today on Stitcher, and please leave a review and let us know how you like the show. We love your feedback, and choose your favorite way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. You can also watch us live every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC at live.twit.tv or in the app or browser plugin of your choice. If you're ever in the San Francisco Bay Area, come on in and watch us live. We love to have a live audience. And you can follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV. You can follow me personally on Twitter at Mike Elgan, that's MikeElgan. And please send us your thoughts and opinions to TNT@twit.tv or call 260-TNT-SHOW. Don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight right here on the Twit Network. My name's Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.